Hi everyone, it's Sarah Todd. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we are going to be chatting about Disney, hence my fit, hence the ears. I am a big Disney adult. I'm not embarrassed to admit that. I grew up going to Disney World. I literally went to Disney World for the first time before I was even 1 year old. That is how much Disney is just like built into who I am as a person, okay? It was meant to be. I have so many amazing memories going to Disney as a child. It was my happy place. Like, I'm so fortunate to have gotten to experience that as a child. But I have been disappointed in Disney lately for the past almost 2 years because they have made some changes to their Disability Access Service or DAS program, and I am disabled and cannot wait in long lines at Disney. So I would typically qualify for DAS and utilize that service in order to access the parks. So we're gonna get into what DAS used to be and what it is now and how that has impacted my trips to Disney. And we're just gonna have a little chat because it's been very disappointing, to say the least. So the first time that I utilized DAS was in 2018. So I have a spinal cord injury from C2 to T1. It originally left me paralyzed from the neck down in 2010 when I was 8 years old. I recovered the ability to walk, but I have partial paralysis in my arms and hands. So I can't move my left hand at all. I have limited movement in my right hand, and I can't lift my arms up higher than this, about like shoulder level. I also have scoliosis that I had a spinal fusion to correct. And I still have even more scoliosis after that, which that's a topic for another day. And I have a lot of other health problems from my spinal cord injury, some that are very personal that I choose not to share publicly, that make it so I cannot wait in long lines at Disney. So when I went in 2018, it was so accessible, honestly. I had gotten a letter from a medical professional of mine explaining why I couldn't wait in long lines and why the Disability Access Service would be useful for me. But the cast members didn't even want to see this letter. We went to guest services. I told them that I was there to sign up for DAS. And I told them I had a letter from my medical professional, but they were like, oh, we don't even need to see it. So they didn't want to see the letter. They proceeded to very promptly register me for the program after I explained why I needed it. And it was a great experience. They were so kind, and I had the access that I needed. So the way that DAS worked in 2018 for me was, for example, if I wanted to ride Big Thunder Mountain Railroad at Magic Kingdom, and that ride had a 30-minute wait, I would go up to the attraction and get a return time to go back to that ride and then get in the fast pass lane, which was like the fast lane, you know, instead of waiting in standby. So the return time would be the wait time minus 10 minutes. And I think they do that because they know that you might wait about 10 minutes in the fast pass line once you return. So I would get a return time for 20 minutes later in this case, and I could wait, you know, wherever I wanted to. I could go to the bathroom, I could go look around in a shop, I could go sit down in the shade, like you could do whatever was best for you while you waited, and then you would come back and get in the fast pass line, wait in that line, and then get on the ride. You could only book one DAS return time at a time, but honestly, the system worked really well for me. So that was my experience in 2018. Then I went back to Disney in 2022, and I told them the same reason that I needed DAS when I went to sign up. And they told me that they wouldn't give it to me for my inability to stand up for a long time, but they would give it to me for the other reason that I stated. And that's when I realized that while I still qualified for DAS, they were starting to get pickier about who qualified. So if your reason alone for not being able to wait in line was that you couldn't stand for long periods of time, they would tell you to just rent a wheelchair or a scooter. So I initially used a wheelchair for 2 months after I became paralyzed, but I have not used a wheelchair since then, except for after my spinal fusion surgery for like 2 weeks. So I'm not a regular wheelchair user. It's not something that I need. It's also not a mobility aid that is very accessible to me because I wouldn't be able to push a manual wheelchair. So I would have to use a power chair or a scooter. Also at Disney, if you need to rent a wheelchair or a scooter, I believe that you have to pay for that rental. So that's just not an appropriate accommodation for tons of reasons, but especially because you have to pay for it. So anyway, I was not pleased at how picky they were becoming about this, but I was thankful that I was able to still get DOS because I needed it. All right, let's fast forward to 2024. Disney announces that they are making changes to their DOS program. I'm gonna read you exactly what the website says now, and obviously it is now 2026, so it could be a bit different from 2024, but Disney overhauled their DOS program and majorly changed the qualifications. So now the website says, learn how this service supports guests who, due to a developmental disability like autism or similar, are unable to wait in a conventional queue for an extended period of time. Plus, learn more about the registration process and usage guidelines. So this is a pretty big change. Before they made these changes, the website did not say that DOS was for those guests who, due to a developmental disability like autism or similar, are unable to wait in a conventional queue. The guidelines were not that specific at all. So obviously, once I saw this change being made, I was concerned because I don't have a developmental disability and I don't have autism, but I still cannot wait in a conventional queue for an extended period of time. So when it came time for my September 2024 trip, I was like, well, I know they've made updates to DOS, but I still need it to access the park, so I'm going to apply and see what happens. So I went through the registration process. You can do it online, which is really nice. I didn't have to wait very long at all. Chatted with a super kind cast member, but I was immediately denied DOS when I told the cast member why I need it. And when I asked what I should do instead, because I knew that I cannot wait in a conventional queue for an extended period of time, they told me to ask the cast member at every attraction that I wanted to experience what my accommodations could be. And they said that they weren't sure what those accommodations would look like, but just to have that conversation with every cast member at every attraction. And I told them that that wasn't really a great solution because it is nerve-wracking having to explain your needs to a stranger. And I am comfortable doing it. I do it all the time, but that's not what I want to have to do several times a day while I'm on vacation. So I told them that that was not a great solution, and they apologized and said that they really wished they could give me DOS, but that they couldn't. And so obviously I understood, this is not their fault. They're just a cast member doing what they're told. Then I asked, what should I do if I'm in a queue and I need to leave if I'm having a medical emergency? And they told me if I feel a medical emergency coming on, that I can leave the queue and return to my place in line. I asked them how that would work, and they told me that whoever I'm with can hold my place in the queue and then I can just get back in line with that person. I explained to them that I was only going to be there with my mom, and if I were having a medical emergency, I would need her to leave the queue with me. And that was when they were like, just talk to the cast member at every attraction and they will tell you what your options are. So I was very disappointed with how that went because I was like, I don't have DOS and I don't have anything to replace DOS. It's one thing to not give me DOS, but it's another to not offer replacement accommodations. If you're not going to offer the main accommodation, you need to offer some type of replacement. But no, I was left with no replacement accommodations that met my needs appropriately. Because of the way applying for DOS worked, at least back when I did this, you could not apply for DOS until you had your park tickets booked, and you had to wait until your trip was either 60 or 30 days out. I can't remember which, but either way, you had to wait to apply. And once you were within that window, you couldn't cancel your trip for a refund because you were within that window. So it basically made it so that you had to lock yourself into this Disney trip and not be able to cancel and get a full refund, but also not know if you would get DOS or not. It was horrible. Okay, so I'm denied DOS and I'm like, all right, well, we can't get a refund for our trip, so let's just go and see how it is. We're gonna watch some TikToks that I made and then I'll elaborate a bit for y'all. All right, here is a video that I made while I was at Epcot on this trip, just kind of summarizing the whole situation.
I was denied Disney's Disability Access Service, and as a physically disabled person who has used this service for years, this is my first time going to Disney without the service. I was here at Epcot yesterday and I didn't ride any rides. I'm back at Epcot again today and I'm not planning on riding any rides either. But during my DOS interview, they told me to go up to the cast member at every attraction I wanted to ride and ask them about what accommodations would be available to me. So I was thinking that today it could be interesting for me to go up to cast members and explain my access needs to them and ask them about what accommodations they have available. But one issue with this is that this leaves the access needs up to the discretion of cast members, and they haven't been consistent at attractions. And this also got me thinking that I've been disabled for 14 years and I've grown very confident asking for help, but I'm still nervous to go up to a stranger and ask them about accommodations for my disability. So I can only imagine how frightening this must be for other disabled people who might not ever really be confident asking for help.
So yeah, that video I made really summarized the situation. I was originally going to go to more parks than just Epcot with my mom, but since I was denied DOS, we decided, all right, we're just gonna go to Epcot because that is the easiest park to go to if you can't ride rides. So we didn't ride any rides at all because I was like, I'm not putting myself in this situation where I might be in a conventional queue and have a medical emergency and I don't really know what to do. Like, I don't know how to leave. I don't know how to get my spot back. I was like, that's not gonna be fun. So thankfully we were there during the Food and Wine Festival and we went around the world and had different foods and different drinks. And we had a great time. We made the most of it, but that is not what we would have done if I had been provided DOS, the accommodations that I needed. And another point that I make in this video that I do think is really important is like, I'm a very confident person. I'm very assertive. I'm very personable too, very extroverted. I love chatting with people. And I am still a little nervous when I go up to a cast member or just any stranger, no matter where I might be, whether I'm at Disney or not, and ask them for help. So I can't imagine how somebody who's like newly disabled or maybe who's just a little shy or doesn't enjoy chatting with people might feel if they're forced to go up and just ask a random stranger for help or accommodations. Like, it is nerve-wracking, it's scary. Like, you don't know how the person's gonna react. You don't know if they're gonna be judgmental. So that's not a great situation for anybody to have to be in, especially when they're supposed to be having fun at Disney, which is supposed to be the most magical place on earth. Okay, so after this experience, I told myself that I wasn't gonna go back to Disney until they fixed this. I was like, this is not okay. I don't wanna be spending my time at Disney not doing what I want to do. So I didn't make any plans to go back. But then at the end of 2025, my friend, who also is a big Disney girl, invited me to go to Disneyland out in California and Disney World in Florida with her. And I'm not gonna say no to that. Like, I want to spend time with my friend. I feel like I should still be able to enjoy the things that I want to enjoy as much as I can. So I said yes to her and we went on those trips. And so at Disneyland, I spent much more time at Disneyland Park compared to California Adventure. At California Adventure, I just rode one ride, that's it. But I didn't even try to apply for DOS. I was like, I don't want to go through the experience of sitting through the DOS call and explaining my needs and then having them deny me, most likely, and just like not getting what I needed, just feeling really horrible about it. So I was like, I'm not even gonna do it. Like, I didn't want to put myself through that. It's honestly super stressful and nerve-wracking and just not worth it when I knew that I was gonna get denied. Because people with physical disabilities don't really get approved anymore. So it's like, it's not worth it. So I went into this trip with the mindset that once again, like, I'm just gonna see what happens, try to make the most of it. So at California Adventure, I was actually there by myself for a couple hours because my friend was working. And I was like, I'm just gonna go see what it's like to ride Radiator Springs Racers. That's my favorite ride at California Adventure. So for that ride, they have the Lightning Lane and the Standby line. So Fast Pass was a thing, in 2018 when I was at Disney World, but then after COVID, it became Lightning Lane. So it's essentially the same thing as Fast Pass. However, you have to pay for Lightning Lane. So I was like, let's see what my options are for riding this ride. They have a single rider line for Radiator Springs Racers and the Lightning Lane and the Standby line. I considered doing the single rider line, but I talked to the cast member outside the line and she said that it can be a bit long of a wait sometimes, and that ride did have a long wait time at that moment. So she was like, if you want to be sure that you're not going to be waiting a long time, you should do the lightning lane. So I was like, all right, I'm going to do the lightning lane and just see what this experience is like. I looked at the lightning lane. It was $18 for that ride only. So if I wanted to ride that ride and not do single rider, not do standby, I had to pay $18 for the lightning lane. I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna film this for TikTok and I wanna show people what this is like. So I paid $18 for the lightning lane, and my time to come back to that ride was between like 1:05 and 2:05, and I booked it at like 12:50. So I didn't have much time to wait. I showed up at the ride. I told them that I would need help buckling my seatbelt and unbuckling my seatbelt because of my limited movement in my arms and hands. And they were like, oh, no problem. Just tell the cast member when you get up to front. So got through the lightning lane and I was like breezing through the queue. Okay, like it was quick. I get up near the boarding area and I tell the cast member that I need help with my seatbelt, and she directs me to the no stairs area. So it's the area where you go if you can't do stairs, but she directed me there because I needed help with my seatbelt. So I head over there and I'm waiting forever. Like if you can't do stairs, or if you're a wheelchair user, or if you need help with your seatbelt, you end up waiting way longer than you would if you're just in the conventional queue area. Like I was waiting probably 20 more minutes when I probably at that point when I asked for help with the seatbelt would have been on the ride in the next 2 or 3 minutes. So that's really unfair and very frustrating. But once it was my turn, I reiterated to that cast member that I needed help with my seatbelt, and they were super accommodating, helped me with the seatbelt. And then I told them that I would need help unbuckling at the end of the ride. And they were like, no worries, we'll help you. So I rode the ride, had a blast. And then when it was time to get off the ride, I just decided to like try unbuckling, and I actually was able to unbuckle. So that was cool. They were there to help me, but I ended up not needing that. But I thought that was a great experience, like cast member wise, like getting help with the seatbelt, but not a great experience having to pay $18 to avoid the standby queue, and also having to wait like literally 20 minutes extra just because I needed help with the seatbelt. Like not fair that so many disabled people end up having to wait even longer in that regard. I also don't really think it's worth $18 to ride one ride. I think maybe if you've like never been there before and you're probably never gonna go back, absolutely, like you should, if you can, try to do as many rides as possible. And then if you want to do lightning lane, yeah, it's worth the $18, but I don't know, just it felt very icky to me, that whole situation, that like I'm paying for this accommodation. The only reason I was willing to do it was I wanted to like experiment and like see what it would be like to show my viewers, and then have that be helpful for people who go in the future so they know what it's like. But yeah, not great. So I made a video showing that experience, so we'll watch that real quick here.
I no longer qualify for DOS at Disney, even though I have a spinal cord injury and can't wait in long lines. I'm currently at Disney California Adventure. Let's go see what it's like using a lightning lane to ride Radiator Springs Racers by myself. This ride is seriously so good. I just paid $18 for the lightning lane, which is ridiculous, but let's go see what it's like. Since I'm by myself, I'm gonna have to ask a cast member to help me buckle and unbuckle at the ride, so we'll see how that goes. I just boarded the ride. They helped me buckle and they assured me they will help me unbuckle at the end of the ride as well. Just finished riding, so my hair is everywhere. Of course, the ride is so fast. I had so much fun riding Radiator Springs, and the cast members were super accommodating. However, I do think it is ridiculous that in order to be able to ride the ride, I had to pay $18 because I no longer qualify for DOS. Also, since I needed help with my seatbelt, they sent me to the no stairs area, and I feel like you end up waiting longer when you're in that area because you have to let so many vehicles pass until you can board. Overall, I had fun. I would not say it's worth $18 though, and it is ridiculous that people who no longer qualify for DOS, like me, now have to pay to ride rides because lightning lane is our only option since we can't wait in long lines.
Okay, so yeah, that is a good summary of my experience riding the ride. Don't think it's worth $18 unless, like I said, this is your only chance to like ever ride this ride. Like you're probably not going to get to go back and you want to avoid the standby queue, or you literally can't wait in the standby queue. Yeah, that's the only time it's worth it. Okay, then the next day I went to Disneyland Park with my friend, and we rode like 7 rides, I believe. over the course of maybe about 6 hours. So we actually had very good luck. It wasn't super busy. I did attempt waiting in some standby queues. I was super nervous about it, but my friend I was with is also somebody who needs DOS and no longer qualifies. And she had come up with some tactics to help me wait and like just feel more calm doing so. And so I honestly was with the right person to attempt my waiting with. When we got in the queue for a ride that said it was a 30-minute wait, we only really waited like 20 or 25 minutes. So often we did find that we were waiting a little bit shorter of a time than the posted wait time said. So that really comforted me. But like overall, I had a ton of anxiety while I was in these queues. I was not relaxed. My legs were really hurting. I was just so anxious something was gonna happen and I was gonna have to somehow leave the queue and then start all over again. So it was a really hard experience for me, honestly, and a lot of the time the rides really weren't worth the stress for me. Like I was like, I would rather avoid this stress, like not wait in these lines. Fun day, but a ton of stress and anxiety that I shouldn't have had to endure when I could have DOS providing me the accommodations that I need. Okay, so fast forward from Disneyland trip to Disney World trip at the beginning of 2026. So beginning of 2026, we went to Epcot and we were like, nope, no rides. So I didn't even want to attempt it. I was like, I don't feel like it. I don't want to deal with the stress of lines. So we just did the same thing where we had food and drinks at Epcot. And again, it was fun, but not what the experience like should be, you know? Then we did go to Animal Kingdom and Magic Kingdom. At Animal Kingdom, we only rode one ride. There honestly weren't very many that I wanted to ride there. And so we just did Flight of Passage. We bought the Lightning Lane for that, which I think was $20 maybe, which once again, so expensive for one ride, not worth it unless it's like your one chance to ride this ride. The ride was so fun. I was super scared, honestly, because I'm like a ride wimp, but I loved it. I would totally do it again. But $20 on top of your ticket is just a ridiculous price to pay for Lightning Lane. I honestly have many thoughts about the pricing of the Lightning Lanes and the DOS restrictions becoming even stronger. We're gonna get into that, trust. Okay, here is a video I made while I was at Disneyland where I summarize my thoughts about the changes, how my day went, and all that jazz.
I no longer qualify for DOS at Disney, even though I have a spinal cord injury and can't wait in long lines. Today at Disneyland, we rode 7 rides. We used a Lightning Lane for 4 of the rides. The longest wait we did in standby was 30 minutes, but it moved much faster than that. Lightning Lane is much different than DOS for a few reasons. 1, it's a paid service. 2, once a Lightning Lane is used on a ride, another Lightning Lane can't be used on that same ride again. 3, once you book a Lightning Lane, you have an hour to use the Lightning Lane on the ride, whereas with DOS, once you book, you can return anytime after that time. And 4, not every ride offers Lightning Lane. For these reasons, Lightning Lane is not a suitable quote-unquote accommodation for many disabled people like myself. Sure, it might make our park experience a bit easier, but it definitely does not provide the accessibility I know Disney can and should offer. And now we're here trying the most viral snack at Disney, Mickey-shaped beignets. They're so good.
So yeah, that really sums it up, honestly. I want to take the time to go over a lot of things people will tell people like me who used to qualify for DOS and now no longer qualify for DOS. I want to go over why I still go to Disney, you know, all the things. So one thing a lot of people say is just use Lightning Lane. It's basically the same thing as DOS. As I explained in that video, Lightning Lane is not the same thing as DOS at all. Not even close, really, okay? So Lightning Lane, for one thing, is a paid service. DOS is not. An accommodation should not be something that you have to pay for. Accommodations are not supposed to be provided at a cost. So that's the main difference in my opinion. Another big difference with Lightning Lane versus DOS is that not every ride offers Lightning Lane. So if you can't wait in a long conventional queue, then you might be out of luck if that ride does not offer Lightning Lane. Whereas if you have DOS, they will often let you in like through the exit and you can go up and get on the ride like usually after waiting for a few minutes. So that's another difference. An additional difference between DOS and Lightning Lane is that with Lightning Lane, once you book a Lightning Lane and use a Lightning Lane on a certain attraction, you can't do that again the same day. Whereas with DOS, like you could ride, Seven Dwarfs Mine Train over and over again with DOS if that's what you wanted to do, like if that's your favorite ride. Just like you could get in the standby line over and over and over again for your favorite ride if you wanted to. So that's why you're allowed to ride rides over and over again with DOS, because you can in the standby queue. So that's another huge difference in my opinion, that you only get to experience a ride once with Lightning Lane versus with DOS, you can ride the ride as many times as you would like. Also, Lightning Lanes often sell out, so they might not even be available for a ride on a certain day. So if you don't get that Lightning Lane for that ride, then you are out of luck, whereas that's never the case with DOS. Another thing a lot of people often say is that DOS was abused, people abused the system, people who didn't need DOS were qualifying and using it. It was just horribly abused, and Disney had to do something and blame the people that abused DOS, not Disney. Sure, I am sure that there were probably people who abused DOS. Yeah, it's highly likely. I'm sure there were. And there might even be some evidence that there were some people who did that. However, it's a dangerous conversation to get into, start saying that people abused a system and people who didn't need an accommodation were using an accommodation, because we never know what someone's individual circumstances are. And not every disability is apparent. People might look at me and be like, why does that girl have DOS? Even though I don't consider my disability to be non-apparent. So it's just a dangerous conversation to get into, in my opinion, and really causes much more harm than good. Like, it's not beneficial to the disability community to be talking about people abusing a system, okay? And honestly, in my opinion, I would rather have a system and accommodation be available to the people who need it and have some people take advantage of it than have it not be available at all. And having it not be available at all is almost the situation that we're in right now, because so many people who need DOS are no longer qualifying for it. So yeah, I don't like the situation we're in. I would rather have DOS be available to those who need it and have some people take advantage of it than where we are now. Another thing that people say in relation to this is that now, people can't take advantage of it because the restrictions are so much stronger. I don't think that's the case. Okay, like Disney is now explicitly telling you who qualifies for DOS. They're saying those guests who have a developmental disability like autism or similar qualify for DOS. Whereas before, they didn't state a diagnosis or a type of disability like that. So the qualifications being developmental disability like autism or similar does not stop people from lying or abusing the system. Like, people could still attempt to do that. So I also think if Disney truly were caring about people abusing the system and wanting to protect the system for the people who actually need it, they would, for one thing, not make those restrictions so strong. They would also likely require a doctor's note, because then they know that the people who are applying for DOS are the ones who need it because they have that doctor's note. Honestly, it seems like Disney probably just wants people to buy Lightning Lane, and they were getting frustrated that a lot of people were using DOS and not Lightning Lane. They really just want people to spend that money on Lightning Lane. I really think that's the motivation. I don't think that the motivation is that they don't want people abusing the system. I don't think that's the case at all. Also, another thing I think people really don't consider very often is that FastPass was the system before Lightning Lane, and FastPass was free. So a lot of disabled people who maybe would have benefited from DOS and, could have used that were just like, oh, well, FastPass is free, so we'll just use that instead. Or they might not have even known about DOS, but now that Lightning Lane is a paid service, DOS was probably getting utilized more for that reason too, because disabled people who were like, oh, I'll just avoid, applying for this program and use FastPass, were like, oh, well, I'm not going to pay for an accommodation. So then they were like, all right, I'll actually use DOS now. I do think that that could have happened. Also, I think with the rise of TikTok and social media, really taking off during COVID and after COVID, more people probably knew about DOS because people were sharing their experiences with it on social media. I think that is also likely a contributor. Lastly, we're gonna get into why do I still go? A lot of people ask me that. Why do you still go to Disney? The only way this will change is if you stop going. So I personally feel that me not going to Disney would only hurt me and not Disney. I think that disabled people should still be allowed to enjoy things as much as possible. Like obviously I don't enjoy Disney as much as I used to because they don't accommodate me in the way that I need. But my friend asked me to go to Disney. I'm not just gonna say no. I'm not gonna miss out on that time with my friend. I think that I should still, you know, try to make the most of things and enjoy my life as much as I can. I also don't think it's right to put the onus on the disabled person to make the change. I think we really need to be putting pressure on the corporations to make the change because they're the ones who can and should. So I think that's what we need to focus on, like pressuring Disney to make these changes. And every time I go, I talk negatively about my accommodations experience and that I was not appropriately accommodated. So I'm continuing that conversation, still discussing it. I also think that me sharing my experience not having DOS at the parks can be helpful for other people who are in my similar situation. Like the reality is that there are people who don't qualify for DOS anymore and they're still gonna go to Disney, and it could be helpful for them to see what my experience at Disney was like so that they have context as to, you know, what they might feasibly be able to do at the parks that day. So I really think that could be helpful for people like that. But, you know, I always think like with anything, the solution is never just to tell a disabled person to stop doing something or to do something differently. You know, I've had people say that to me about all sorts of things. Like when I'm talking about my hair being difficult to wash, like, oh, just cut your hair. Like, no, I like my long hair. That's my favorite thing about myself. I don't want to cut it. People say that to me about shoes. Oh, just wear slip-on shoes since you can't tie shoes. I'm like, well, sometimes I want to wear shoes that have a certain look and I'll just deal with the inaccessibility of those shoes, you know? I think my life is going to come with access barriers, and sometimes I truly would rather just like deal with those access barriers than not have an experience at all. So that's how I feel about Disney. Other people are totally allowed to feel differently and like want to never go back and fully just not support them at all. And I understand that, like that's valid. I think that we should all make our own individual choices about how we want to approach Disney going forward. So yeah, that was a lot. There's so much to say about DOS, this whole situation. I'm really sad that it's gone on for nearly 2 years now, but I'm hoping that we'll see changes to DOS that are positive, or that maybe they'll even create like a new disability program in the future. We'll see. I don't know how likely that is to happen, but you know, my optimistic self really loves to hope. So thank you all for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. I'm gonna be trying to post more long form YouTube videos in the future because it's really fun to just like sit down and chat. So if you have any ideas for videos you want to see me do, leave those ideas in the comment section down below. Would love to see y'all subscribe to my channel and also follow me on my other social channels, Instagram, TikTok, all the things. I look forward to seeing you all at my next video. Thank you so much for watching. Have a magical day. Bye everyone.